Hey everyone, this is acyuta-bhava from Nightlight Astrology, and today we are going to take some time out to hear some of the stories that you guys have been sharing about the recent transit. So we're going to take a look at Mercury's recent conjunction with Pluto, as well as Jupiter's ongoing sextile with Uranus, and some of the amazing stories that you guys have been sharing through using the hashtag grabbed, which, as you know, is something I've been doing for a while now. The planets were traditionally called grahas by Indian astrologers, grabbers. They have a way of showing up in our life and seizing our consciousness, and oftentimes orchestrating events, and whether they're big or small or hilarious or tragic, but we are dealing with them every day. And the purpose of this channel is not just to offer people interpretations about the everyday weather, but to also deepen our understanding of the planets themselves, to cultivate relationships with them, so that as they show up in our lives, rather than grabbing us, we are grasping what they have to say to us. We are understanding some of the divine wisdom that comes through the planets, which really is the purpose of astrology on a certain level. There's not just one purpose of astrology, but that certainly is one of them in my book. And so it's been a real joy to be doing this series for a while now. There are two transits again today that we're going to look at: Mercury's conjunction with Pluto, some of the stories you guys shared there, as well as Jupiter, Uranus, the sextile there. The first one, I will be honest with you, the Mercury-Pluto stories were a little heavier. Not surprisingly, Mercury-Pluto is a bit of a heavier transit. Jupiter-Uranus, more uplifting, not surprising. So, but at any rate, let's dive in and hear what you guys have had to say about this. We'll start with Mercury-Pluto and we will end with Jupiter and Uranus. So if you ever, by the way, want to share a story, the simplest way to do it is to use the hashtag grabbed in the comments section of any of my YouTube videos. Put the name of the transit, for example, Mercury conjoined Pluto, and then share a brief story. Please don't go into a lot of detail about your birth chart. Just tell us the story and how it correlates with Mercury, Pluto, or whatever the transit may be. If you don't want to share in the comments section, you can always email us, grabbed@nightlightastrology.com. And we don't respond to any of those emails. We just aggregate them and then turn them into these episodes. So, okay, here we go. Mercury's conjunction with Pluto had a lot of really good stories. I had to narrow it down because I probably had 40 or 50 more I could have used that you all shared. But I picked ones that I thought were really poignant, that would make, had some variation too. I will say though, again, like these were not the most like uplifting. So these are a little heavier, Jupiter, Pluto, a little lighter, but here we go. If I'm not mistaken, the moon in Cancer was also opposing Mars in Capricorn around the same time as the Mercury-Pluto conjunction. My youngest son's birthday was Saturday and mine was Sunday. So we had big weekend plans, only to find out, and this is key with Mercury-Pluto, getting that surprising news or that piece of information that's sort of shocking. My friend's son was in a horrific head-on collision and his femur shattered his pelvis. He has a long recovery ahead. I received another call that evening about my nephews. One of them has a long history of mental illness, and he stabbed the other one with a 10-inch hunting knife 6 times. He ended up with the knife lodged 8 inches into his back. They had to surgically remove it. Thankfully, he is home recovering and expected to be okay. The other one is in jail, will be arraigned today and facing attempted murder charges. Wow, that is so intense. Those are two really heavy and intense pieces of news about young boys, not your own, but in your life, in your, in the field around you. So that's, wow, it doesn't get more intense than that. And prayers to everyone involved in those accidents and in that hateful act as well. Here's another one, Mercury, Pluto. The day that Mercury conjoined Pluto, I uncovered 2 massive bags in my boyfriend's closet, both of which belonged to his ex. They were tucked in the corner with suitcases and bags covering. As much as I was upset, I laughed at how Pluto manifested itself in this dark corner of the room. He had claimed to get rid of them a while ago, so I got really suspicious. This finding of mine escalated into an argument, the end result of which was me deciding to end things. After a few days of no contact with him, he called me crying and announced that his dad is not feeling well. His dad was taken to the hospital, and his blood work showed signs of potential cancer. This event led us to talking regularly again. We decided to get together and do shrooms for the first time. This was a cathartic yet amazing experience, which involved a lot of old wounds resurfacing. We reflected on said wounds, and honestly, I felt closer to him than ever before. I went over to his place to meet him, and he told me he discarded, this is afterward, he discarded his ex's belongings. My brief sigh of relief was interrupted by other upsetting findings on his laptop. It is uncanny but incredible how these events manifested so precisely. Wow, that is quite a turn of events, and I don't even know what to say about that. So I like that there was a middle portion, like an interlude with mushrooms. That part was fun. But yeah, well, at least maybe, there was some growth that happened through all of this for him, and maybe that's a good thing. In the meantime, some lessons there for you too, in terms of what you found and trusting your instincts and things like that. I would imagine that's a good story. All right, here's another one. Mercury, Pluto. My husband confessed to me last night that he wants to sleep with other women. That is hard. That's a hard one. One of the things about Mercury Pluto I've noticed over time is that whatever is revealed under the Mercury Pluto dynamic usually sets in motion a series of changes that are overdue. And even if the revelation itself is hard to swallow, maybe there is some promise of making changes that comes in the wake of the difficult news, and those changes revitalize things. They can revitalize a relationship, or they can put you on a path of trusting something that you haven't been listening to. Whatever the case may be, I hope that goes well for the two of you. There's another one, Mercury Pluto. I woke in the early hours seeing the most horrific, hellish cruelty in my dream. I won't describe because it's too upsetting. My life is fine and the sun is shining, but I feel dread, anxiety, and darkness. I wonder where this sudden dark energy came from. My plans for the day are so pleasant, but it is tainted with a dark, unsettling mood that I'm struggling to shake off. That is very typical of Mercury Pluto, in fact, to have that dark, ominous feeling, unsettling or unsettled sense of anxiety and dark dreams. Very common for Mercury Pluto. So hopefully things have lifted since then. And I always tell people, that dark space, something in the soul or psyche needs us to tend to it and pay attention to it. So I hope also that you had some way of being able to serve or care for that psychic space. And often when we do, it speaks, and then it can become a landscape that we're familiar with and that offers more than just the feeling of total aversion. Here's another one, Mercury Pluto. My brother has suddenly become MIA from our family group chat, so much that we were all actually really concerned. He would respond when we texted, but he wasn't chatty or sending things like he normally would. I knew something happened. Then he texted me under the Mercury Pluto conjunction that he had been going through marijuana withdrawals, trying to quit, and had been extremely irritable with insomnia. He made me promise not to tell my mother. I was so relieved because I was really worried. There's that shocking piece of news, something hidden, something coming to the surface, very typical. And I'm glad that, that's all things considered, it could have been worse, right? So I hope that he finds some relief there. With the Mercury-Pluto conjunction, my husband and I just received an email from my son's teacher that one of his classmates came up to him after PE and punched him in the nuts. She said that he told her that he is fine, going to be an interesting heart-to-heart chat when he gets home from school. That's a funny thing. We got a message also about our daughter in school, and just, things that were going on there. And my wife is about to leave for a little bit on a yoga retreat. First time she's been away from the kids since they were born, so 6 years. And our daughter's been having some anxiety about it that we didn't know. So found that out through a note that came into the teacher under Mercury conjoined Pluto. Isn't that interesting? Mercury conjunct Pluto. I was diagnosed with a kidney stone. I was in denial because my brother-in-law was diagnosed with kidney cancer the day my own kidney started spasming. Wow. That's one of those bizarre synchronicities. The day Mercury conjoined Pluto, I attributed my pain to my back strain from a recent move and ignored it until I could ignore it no longer. I thought I was being a hypochondriac. I will soon be relieved from the pain, but ouch. Ironically, this kidney stone was caused by too much vitamin C that I was taking to ward off COVID. I caused a disease by trying to prevent a different disease. I keep wondering what the message is in that. That's fascinating. As someone who has had a kidney stone before, how? And it's interesting the way the messages come through the stones. But I can totally attest to that. It's kind of crazy. I love this story so much, this next one. Mercury conjunct Pluto. I was reading an astrological book on the fire element by Stephen Forrest and stopped on his chapter on Aries, my rising sign, before falling asleep. He was explaining that Aries signifies competitiveness of nature, dog-eat-dog themes that I've habitually struggled with. The next day, while walking to the mailboxes at my apartment with my dog, a Doberman that was in our dog park saw us because the doors were open, ran out and attacked us both, leaving my Yorkie poodle temporarily paralyzed in all of her legs. She is now on the mend, and with physical therapy, we are expecting a full recovery, but there's more. I later found out the other dog's owner had recently adopted the dog from animal control. And I believe that symbolically, Pluto literally came to give me the message that I was reading about, dog eat dog, expanding it from an intellectual understanding to a soul deep experiential knowing I will never forget. We are both okay, but wow, what an experience. Well, there's Mercury Pluto, right? A message from a book transforming into a literal event and speaking to you about some dog eat dog phrase and competitive part of your own nature. I mean, that is really a remarkable story. Thank you for sharing that one. Mercury, Pluto, this weekend, my aging mom is handing her finances to me and made me power of attorney for her estate. I'm now in charge of making all the decisions for her care as well as investments. What I do will have a direct effect on my 5 siblings and their future inheritance. I didn't ask for this responsibility, and yet Mercury is placing me here. I'm now digging through the paperwork she had just shoved in a drawer for 2 years and going through the process of uncovering all that she has financially, as well wading through the complex relationships with my siblings so as not to become either a dictator or a slave to their opinions or desires. It feels like a heavy burden, and I know it will require a delicate hand. There's Mercury, Pluto for sure. Sometimes my camera gets unfocused. That is definitely a Mercury Pluto scenario right there, having to deal with that, take responsibility for all of that. That's intense. Wow. So those are all more Mercury Pluto than you can get. I mean, those are just so quintessential Mercury Pluto stories. Let's hear some about Jupiter Uranus. I love these as well. You guys shared some really good ones. So one of the things that I talked about with Jupiter Uranus was that saving grace, that being careful of things that are too good that seem to be true, that silver lining that can come up and save you from a worst case scenario, expansive opportunities that open up suddenly. Jupiter sextile Uranus. I've been desperately looking for ragdoll kittens, but they ran upwards of $1,000. I found a seller that ships them for only $600 online. I was ready to send them all of my information and money, and then remembered I needed to consult my partner before big purchases because I got scammed last year for $2,000. I started noticing fishy things about the business, like they texted me at 5 a.m. It didn't have an actual address. after talking to someone on the phone, he clearly uh, he gave me 20 obvious tip-offs that this was not a cat breeder. It's so obvious now that I see it, but I'm just glad I didn't rush to get a cheap kitten that I thought would fix all of my problems, and also that the worst case was avoided. There you go. There's Jupiter Uranus right there. The scheme that is a little too good to be true. Potentially also the avoidance of a worst case scenario, and also sometimes things that are truly magnificent, true things, opportunities that come up that are really special. Another one, Jupiter Uranus. I've decided to retire from what I thought was my dream job. The day it was offered to me 4 years ago, I had my paperwork ready to turn in. I work in a government position, but couldn't say no to the opportunity. After a series of traumatic personal events, some life-threatening, I realized that I really am ready to retire now. But the paperwork is slow, and I found myself complaining about every aspect of my job. And this morning, I suddenly realized that I'm blessed to have this opportunity and grateful for my job as long as I have it. A complete change of perspective. This sudden epiphany felt like Uranus Jupiter because I can now see the light at the end of the tunnel whereas before I had a gloomy cloud hanging over me. I love that about Jupiter Uranus. It's one of my favorite aspects of Jupiter Uranus, the way in which something that has been hanging over us suddenly disappears. Something that was a threat or a worry or a concern or a worst case scenario is suddenly erased. In this case, you're trying to retire. It's going to take a while. And rather than having this gloomy attitude, suddenly, like a lightning strike, you have a positive one. That is incredibly Jupiter Uranus-like in nature. Something that happened to me. So I was contemplating whether or not I wanted to trade in my car while there is still some value to it and upgrade. And I was thinking about the price that it would cost. And I was like, yeah, it's a lot of money. And in my daily prayers, I just said something to Krishna. I was like, you know what? I'm sure there's a better use for this particular amount of money than this, upgrading a car just because I want to maximize its trade-in value as it's aging or whatever. This car could still work fine for a while, and there's no need, blah, blah, blah. So I'm sure there's a more sacred use for this money. And lo and behold, an opportunity came up for us to, with a group of friends that we have in India who are building a small retreat center for us to go in on that land and help develop it to host gatherings in India at a sacred site. So same exact amount of money that the car would have cost, like trading in and upgrading my car would have cost. So I was absolutely blown away by that. Here's an opportunity to be a part of something that, honestly, a couple of years ago, I said to my wife, well, maybe we'll do something like that closer to retirement. Because I just, the opportunity doesn't just come out of nowhere. You have to do a lot of work to make something like that happen. But here's an opportunity that literally landed in our lap out of nowhere and presented itself. Hey, do you want to get involved in building a retreat center in India that you can use, and you can go and stay there yourself on pilgrimage or host retreats and so forth, and with a small group of people that we really love, are very close with, and pretty cool. It's an eco village too, so it's really got a sort of sustainable agricultural vibe to it. So really excited about that, and yeah, hopefully in the next, if it all works out, we'll see. Could be, we'll see a Jupiter Uranus, but I thought that was really amazing that it happened to be the exact same amount as the car upgrade, and that I had paused and been like, wait, do I really want to do this? And I felt saved from using my resources in a way that was probably wasteful. So, that to me was a very Jupiter Uranus moment. At any rate, this one comes from one of my students. They shared it in class, and I'm going to end with it because it's my favorite one. Jupiter sextile Uranus. Wednesday evening, I was sitting on my couch watching TV with my son, waiting for my husband and our youngest to get home from baseball. 7:47 p.m., my cell phone rang and my life changed. Timelines were altered. My husband and our 11-year-old son were hit by a drunk driver in a head-on collision while driving home from practice. Arriving at the scene was so surreal. The impact of the crash was so intense that the women's vehicle split in half, partially crushed under the front of my husband's truck. The other half, 20 feet away in a ditch with the women trapped inside. My husband and my son standing on the side of the highway, seemingly unharmed. It took my breath away. I was told it was a miracle. Even one of the state patrol officers came up and pulled me aside and said, in 25 years, you could count on one hand how many times an accident of this magnitude didn't result in multiple fatalities. You guys are lucky, he said. Everyone was stunned. Statistics estimate that only 2% of crashes are head-on collisions, but they are the most deadly. A head-on collision at speeds at or over 70 miles per hour, statistics state a guaranteed fatality. The driver who hit my family was estimated to be going between 75 to 80, and she never hit the brakes. There was one set of skid marks, and those were from my husband, and yet no one died. I can't speak to the drunk driver's injuries, however, she is alive and will survive. Apart from suffering some PTSD, my husband and son suffered whiplash, bruised ribs, and will need physical therapy. It was a traumatic event, a true shock to the system. Thursday night, my husband and I were sitting down with our boys talking about the accident, and I had asked if anyone saw or stopped to help. My husband said, well, yeah, there was a man there who came right up to us after it happened. That's when my son said, yeah, as soon as we opened our eyes, Dad broke out to get me, and we turned around and he was standing right there. He said, are you guys okay? Then he looked at me and said, you're going to be okay, to stay there. And to stay there. He was calm, my son said, like he was a fireman, like a fireman would be. Then he walked across the highway to the other car, looked in and said something to the driver, and then he left. I said, he just got in his car and left. My son said he didn't have a car. He was just there. And then if it was like he was gone. Of course, I'm sure it would have been hard to maybe notice everything too in that state of shock. But my husband had forgotten all about it until then, still is unsure of how the man had gotten there so quickly, and no recollection of any car pulling up or leaving. They never saw him again. It just feels like an angel, you know? All four of us just looked at each other, unable to explain what exactly they saw or who this man was. My son said, that's when my son said, I remember everything after I saw light. I just can't remember before. Wow, that is powerful. We are all still dealing with the emotions and shock of it. Logic suggests no one should be able to survive the accident, but they did. The worst was prevented, and the universe blessed us with its grace, and everyone involved in the accident has been given a gift, the gift of life. It's been helpful the last couple of days to reflect on the archetypes of this transit. Helps me not to go down the rabbit hole of why and how. The gods gave us a gift. It won't be wasted, and I'm forever grateful. Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah, I mean, as a parent too, I don't know if you guys do this, those of you who are parents out there, but you imagine things like that happening, and then you just have to like, no, I can't go there in my head. I can't even put that out there, so to speak. And you just don't even want to imagine getting that call with a spouse or children or whatever. So thank God that, things worked out. It's very Jupiter Uranus to have that feeling of divine intervention somehow, and things work out, opportunities open up, blessings or worst case scenarios are avoided. That is Jupiter Uranus to a T. Bunch of other people talked about job opportunities cropping up, amazing promotions happening, financial opportunities coming about, liberation from feelings of stuckness. So there were so many other good ones to share, but I thought that one really took the cake. I mean, that was such a story. I want to end with a few things to say based on what we've talked about today, these beautiful stories that you all shared. One is when it comes to the planetary transits, when it comes especially to Jupiter Uranus, but all of them, don't try to create the opportunity. Don't try to create the next thing, especially when you're feeling stuck or unsure, or the planets deliver difficult news. There's this feeling of, well, what do? I have to do something. And often enough with the planets, it's actually about just waiting for a decision to arrive, an event to appear, the next step to appear before you. And when it does, make the decision that your heart and soul know to be the right, virtuous, correct decision. Usually, if we wait, rather than when the planets are creating pressure and intensity, revelation is coming up, shocking news is being revealed, opportunities are presenting themselves. And there's this feeling of, I don't know what to do with this. It's very common. I don't know what to do with this. Just wait. Wait, because the I don't know what to do is like an existential, it's like an existential yoga posture. And the benefits of that posture will appear in terms of key choices or decisions that can be made. And you'll know which one is the right one, but you have to assume the position of I don't know for a little bit. This is overwhelming. What do I do with this news? This is shocking. There's feeling of what should I use this money for, or what should I do with the responsibility that's just been given to me to handle my mother's money, or and then rather than saying, okay, preemptively, let me figure out what to do, just wait. And oftentimes just waiting a little bit and staying in the position of I don't know, help me, I don't know what to do, the natural choice, the set of choices will appear, and you'll know usually right away which is the right one to make. That doesn't happen all the time, but I found that happens a lot more often than not when we give ourselves time to not know what to do about the things popping up. Whatever is hidden in time will be revealed. One of the great things about the planets is that the planets are always revealing to us things that are hidden, pent up, trapped. So sometimes we feel like, well, I don't know if I'll ever understand something. I don't know where my life is going. There's deep things inside that I don't know how to deal with. You also trust that in time, things that are hidden or pent up or blocked will be released. And sometimes it's just a matter of tolerating the urge to try to reveal ahead of time. Things have their own time and their own sense of when to be revealed, when to show themselves. The miracles that we experience with the planets, the big highs or the blessings that come with them, the relief that they provide us with at times, especially in the case of the story about avoiding fatality in the accident. The planets don't just give us things. They don't just save us from things. It's also that they take us beyond events themselves. This moment of relief that my student experienced is not just a moment of relief. Oh, thank God the worst didn't happen. I got lucky. There's also this feeling of the event taking you beyond relief, beyond life and death itself, to something of eternal value, to the soul, to the reality of the indwelling spirit soul. So these moments when the planets deliver something that's truly amazing, it's not just that it amazes us in terms of the events of our life. It's also that it takes us beyond the events of our life, that something bigger than the events of our life itself is speaking, putting the events of life into some greater cosmic context. And it's that context that we don't want to lose. Last but not least, the planets may hit you in the nuts. The planets could strike you in the rocks, kick you in the ball skis, but you can also hit the planets in the nuts as well. Hit them back in the nuts. And here's how you can do so. Stay curious and always have a good sense of humor. If we can stay curious and have a good sense of humor, wonder, childlike curiosity, even if the planets do hit you in the nuts, you'll be kicking them right back. So that's what I've got for today. I hope you guys enjoyed this series. Thank you everybody so much for sharing your stories. Remember, you can share them anytime by using the hashtag grabbed or emailing us grabbed@nightlightastrology.com. List the name of the transit, tell us the story, keep it brief if you can, and we might use it in a future episode. That's what I've got for today. Take it easy, everyone. Bye.